Good morning, and we welcome you all to the second day of this conference, Palestinian Studies. The title for the third session is the recent developments in the Israeli policies. We have four speakers, starting with Ahmed As'ad. He is a researcher. He has a double master's degree in contemporary Arab studies and a master's in Israeli studies from Birzeit University. Ahmed will speak about the Israeli strategies to control the space in Area C. Ahmed, the floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. Just a comment. The name is the bypass roads and control of the space area in Area C. This paper is an attempt to have an in-depth understanding of the Israeli policies through the bypass roads, and this study uses a different framework from sociologists, engineers, and planners and others in order to understand the mechanisms used to control the space using the bypass roads. And the hypothesis here says that the Israeli bypass roads is a central part to Israeli colonialist project, and that these roads are a tool to develop a colonialist project to provide more support and settlers and achieve the double objective by cutting or tearing, fragmenting the territory, and also fragments or cuts short the time needed by the Israelis to control. The other hypothesis is that these roads turn the West Bank into cantons and fragmented parts. In our understanding to the bypass roads, here we mix between the colonialism and other planners and experts speaking about the settlement. Wolf will speak. Patrick Wolf speaks that the colonialist settlement is based on the hypothesis of removing the indigenous residents from their land. And this is very basic in the Israeli colonialism. That is, to keep the Israeli borders as random, that flexible. At any time they keep expanding their borders. And these bypass roads are part of this expansion to Israeli borders. And Seri Hanafi has added to understanding the strategies. He called it the spatial cleansing, as discussed by others. The spatial cleansing is to uproot and to destroy the space and to cleanse it. Using the security, the army, the settlers, and planners of roads. Sharon speaks about colonialism and the Israeli planning to this territory. And he speaks about the idea of the wall, and this leads to control of the territory. Can someone ask him to slow down, please? Also, Ra'if speaks about the issue of borders, that these territories are far from Israel and still considered within and outside Israel at the same time. I'm sorry, but he's racing. Ra'if says at the same time the land will be within Israel and outside Israel, and Area C is close to Israel and far away at the same time. This is done using the bypass roads, and so this testifies that Israel is controlling and adding the land. At the same time, they want this land, they don't want it whenever they want to annex them, and when they don't want to annex the citizens, so they have that status of exclusion. Yusuf Jabbarin speaks about the hegemony planning, such as the planning for the cities as a tool to control the space and the citizens. Ariel Handel speaks about a basic idea, which is I'm trying to best use the time. All the theories that are used by the planners and legal experts, all these theories, including the racial cleansing, ethnic cleansing, the spatial cleansing, and I use that with Dr. Munir in my studies. I called it the Palestino cleansing, that is cleansing anything that has to do with the Palestinians, that is cleansing the Palestinian identity, cleansing of the citizens, their history, heritage, but the land and the territory is the central part. The bypass roads has several objectives, that it divides the West Bank and turns it into fragmented cantons and prevents the establishment of a Palestinian state. And these roads have been intensified after signing the Oslo Accords in order to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. And it re-outlines the map for the West Bank, that is the territories between the Israeli settlements and the West Bank, and also connects the Israeli settlements to facilitate the travel of settlers, and is a physical barrier in front of the Palestinians, and leads to spatial control system and regime to divide the Palestinian territories. There are some facts about these roads. The percentage of agricultural roads confiscated to build in these roads make 20% of the agricultural land in the West Bank. And there is a report by the Land Research Center 2014 that these roads took 196,000 dunums, with Palestinians not allowed to use them. This is for the roads only. But the 196,000 dunums beside these roads were taken. So the total number of land taken for the roads and settlements is around 33% of the. This shows the network of bypass roads, all the roads and with their numbering. And this shows us that all the Palestinian governorates, 11 ones, none of them is free of these roads. It's just like a cobweb, and it secludes, segregates, and fragments even the main cities and communities. And this network is focused mainly in Area C. Here is road number 90 and 60 in red, and 1 in number 1. Mr. Mohamad Al-Atrash wrote about the roads, says that they constitute the letter H in English, that it cuts the West Bank into an H letter like west of road 90, so vertically and horizontally, and also it achieves control to the space. So 3 roads only. The photo before that, we showed you all the roads, how they are dividing the West Bank. Here I have the cross section of the West Bank. The red one is road number 60, and to the white, to the left and right, is around 150 meters as an added space to the road. And this added to the side of the road, and we multiply it. So every 4 meters length, it makes 1 dunum as the vicinity or buffer vicinity for the road. This look at this tunnel. Palestinians call it the Beit Jala tunnel. How they drilled across the below Beit Jala. By the way, this is a Jerusalem area. It's outside the wall, but it is controlled by the Israeli occupation municipality. And you see how they have the Israelis are passing above the bridge and the Palestinians below the bridge itself. So not only this achieves that hegemony, but also separation. The Rizq who live there, they don't have the sun, while the Israelis, they fly with their cars above the heads of the Palestinians, moving between Jerusalem to the settlements west of Bethlehem. This road is a tunnel under the bypass road number 557. It's called the live fabric. The Palestinians above, where they fly and drive high, and the occupied Palestinians, just look and see here, the colonialist road, see how it is well maintained, and look at the tunnel dug for the Palestinians, how it looks for the occupied Palestinians. And this tunnel represents the Israeli solutions for the Palestinians to establish a geographic and social contiguity for them. So these are the tunnels proposed by the Israelis, cement made with a few meters width, above which the Israeli roads pass. And this achieves the Israeli hegemony and use by the Israelis. And also it achieves the idea of Israeli towers and walls, that the Israelis are towering above the Palestinians. And here is the road 443. Here the Palestinians are not allowed to use them. And it separated the West Ramallah villages from each other, from Safa, Beit Ur and others. So no contiguity between these villages. And so 3 tunnels below this road for the Palestinians to have their daily contact. Before the establishment of this Israeli road, the Palestinians had that daily contact, but with the establishment of that contact, the Palestinians were deprived of that contact, so they dug these tunnels for them. And this is the idea. As Yusuf Jabari mentioned, this achieves the idea of hegemony and control, and they provided alternatives for the Palestinians that are just like apartheid and racial separation for the Palestinians. Here's another photo. The Israeli bypass roads are always being built or under construction all the time. Many organizations monitor the Israeli violations every day and every month. At the maximum, there is an intensification to these bypass roads, and there are I have some conclusions. These roads achieve Israeli bypass roads achieve Israeli hegemony and control to the Palestinian space, and takes the land from the Palestinians without publicly saying that. They say, okay, we take this for the road, and you have the vicinity, the buffer zone or buffer vicinity for the road, so you cannot use your agricultural land accordingly. Also, the bypass roads achieve or fragmenting the Palestinian contiguity and achieve Palestinian demographic connectivity, but the Israelis have the geographic and demographic connectivity. So the Israelis can cross the same distance in a few minutes compared to the Palestinians, who need around 2 or 3 hours to cross to cover the same distance, because they are not allowed to use the bypass roads and are forced to use other Israeli alternatives that are not efficient as that. Also, the bypass roads, like the settlements and the watchtowers, they provide the occupiers with the strength and with that psychological superiority that they are up high and you are down. And most of the indicators from the field prove that the number of Israeli settlers and settlements in Area C is on the increase because of the Israeli bypass roads, such as the Lieberman Road in Bethlehem. When they constructed the road, the number of settlers increased, and the settlement outposts, Nicodim and Teqwa settlements, just because of constructing the Israeli Lieberman Road. These roads complement the Israeli policies for construction for wall to achieve hegemony, control, and exclusion of Palestinians. And all these tools, as I call it, as Palestino cleansing or cleansing of Palestinians, anything that has to do with Palestinians for the interest of the Israelis, and to change, rename the place as mentioned by Dr. Abdurrahim Sheikh. Like road number 60, we had other villages with names that do not exist anymore. Now they are called with Israeli roads with numbers. So the naming is with the number given to each road, and on every part of the road, the Israelis, they put a letter code to use that for military purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Now we move to Mr. Khalil Toufakji, who is a geographer with a diploma in GIS from Arizona University in 1998, director of the Maps and GIS department at Beit Asharq Orient House. He has several specialized geographic studies. The title of his presentation, The Jordan Valley in the Israeli Security Ideology. Good morning. In order to go into the Jordan Valley or area C as a Palestinian geographer, the definition given yesterday to the Jordan Valley is taken from OCHA, differs entirely from what I will be saying, because we as geographers, the Jordan Valley to us is different, is totally different. In other terms, yesterday, Khuruj Beit was part of the Jordan Valley. In the Israeli vision, the Jordan Valley is totally different from what we will be referring to today. The Jordan Valley is the lower area. Here, I'm not speaking of the Ghab or Biqa project in Lebanon. I speak from the Tabariya area, from Bardala and Ain al-Bayda up to Ain Jadid to the south. And this area, the low area, starting from Tabariya up to the Jordan Valley with a altitude difference of 180 meters. This is why the Jordan Valley is draining in this area. The Jordan Valley must be divided into two parts. In other terms, the area in which the Jordan Valley which the Jordan River runs and floods, and it's called Azur area, but the highest area with an altitude of 120 to 40 meters is what we call the valley, or Al-Ghor, or the Badland. That is the Kitar. So this is what they call it, the Kitar. The Jordan Valley from north to south is 5 kilometers wide to 20 to 25 south. That is Jericho and the Dead Sea. The Jordan Valley, if we look at the Jordan Valley from the Jordanian perspective, if we can call it as such, it has a concept as the area below the feet of the mountain. In other terms, the hills overlooking the Jordan Valley are not classified as part of the Jordan Valley. We, the Palestinian people, included these hills as a result of the OCHA definition. Israelis-wise, the feet of the mountains, the hills overlooking the Jordan Valley are part of the Jordan Valley. So the jungles of Hebron, and Nablus, and Jericho are within the definition because of the Israeli security ideology, because the Israelis want to say that the Jordan Valley is not only the low area below sea level, but also the hills overlooking this valley. In other words, Male Avraim, which is the capital of the Jordan Valley, is part of the Jordan Valley. In other words, the Alon line, which is far from the Jordan Valley, is the boundary of the Jordan Valley for them. And of course, in the Israeli security theory, on this basis, when we as Palestinians wish to study the Jordan Valley and Area C in the Jordan Valley, we must study it from the perspective that it is the low area below the feet of the western mountains of the Jordan River. So there are some valleys which flood in this area toward the Jordan River. Now, in this area, the West Bank is divided from strategic importance point of view into three strategic areas. The first is the western area, which is a hilly area from an altitude of 200 to 300 meters, which is now on the Israeli side, and part of it is now behind the wall, and the other part is Area C. And there is the area of the back of the mountain, which extends from Nablus, Jenin, Ramallah up to Hebron. And here there are military areas in the Israeli vision, which speaks of Ibal mountain, 950 meters, Tal al-Asur, 1016 meters, and Johannes mountain in Hebron, about 1018 meters. We don't speak of Jarmuq, which is 2,200 meters in the Galilee area. Of course, there is a mountain called the Small Harbon Mountain, not a Sheikh mountain, but the Small Harbon River next to the Dead Sea, which is also considered as early warning zone. So this series of mountains that extends from Nablus to Ramallah to Hebron is, according to the Israeli strategic vision, part of the Israeli security strategy. Now, when the boundaries of the municipality of Jerusalem were demarcated, they were demarcated to the east as overlooking the Jordan Valley, that is Zaytun Mount, Al-Masharif Mount, and all of this area is the upper hill, so that if any forces come from the eastern side, this area will be the cemetery of their tanks. So today I speak how they see this area. Thus, all of the Israeli strategic studies, starting from Arnon Sofer, who is the professor of geography at the University of Haifa, to all of the security officers, they speak of the Jordan Valley as a boundary separating any Palestinian state and the Jordanian state. Because we learned from our experience in Gaza, the question of the subways and tunnels. So it's not the issue of tunnels to the extent that it is a purely economic issue, but security was used for security purposes. Now I will speak of two issues. At all levels, the Israelis, whether it be at political or security levels, they all speak of the question of the Jordan Valley. To the extent that the first settlement was established there, which is Kalia, which is Beit Ha'arava in 1939. It was in this area for economic reasons, but it was where the Israeli side was the boundary of the Hebrew state. But this was destroyed in 1948 and was rebuilt after 1967. Now the projects. As you can see, the governorates within the West Bank, these governorates have nothing to do with the geographic issue to the extent that they relate to the political issue. We, in 2005, started to divide the West Bank into 5 regions, geographic regions and not political regions. It has nothing to do with politics here, where the Jordan Valley, starting from Bardala and Kardale up to the south, as a single region under single control and not under 3 political entities, that is a governor of Jericho, governor of Tubas, governor of Nablus, and so on. And this Palestinian issue of Area C was marginalized largely. Now we come to another question to see that it is not only the Israelis but also the Palestinians played a role in this. Over 5,000 years we have been struggling to give names to the Bedouins in this area. You know that today they speak of Bedouin communities, but they do not speak of Palestinian villages. We told them that the Bedouins in the European concept are the nomads, and they were not aware of this till the issue of Al-Khan al-Ahmar appeared, because OCHA mentioned in its issues and maps that they started to the east of the quarry, or Bedouins of the east, west of the quarries, above the sea level, below the sea level, and so on. So Israelis, when they establish a settlement block, they give it a name: water, electricity, and protection. Of course, in 1967, when the West Bank was blocked, a number of laws were enacted and under military orders. The military orders and the Jordan Valley, for the Israeli theory, equates 27% of the West Bank area. 27%, because it includes this whole area. So all of the West Bank was closed as military training zones, and the reasons behind this is that the vision was that there was an Eastern Front at that time. The Eastern Front comprised Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. Of course, this Eastern Front was dismantled in 1991 when the Israeli rockets started to arrive, so the question of the buffer zone that used to exist ended. But the Israelis still use this buffer zone, which even includes up to Western Amman, in spite of the Jordanian-Israeli peace accord. But the boundaries of the Israeli buffer zone includes West Amman as well, so it is forbidden for any Jordanian military plane to fly over the western side of Amman. The closed military areas were followed by the use of the Natural Reserves Law, that is the National Protected Areas, and this was a reason to confiscate many land in the Area C. The wall, we know it. We're done with this issue on the eastern side, and there was a project to establish an eastern wall, and it was halted. But there are still 25 Israeli settlements whose population does not exceed 6,000 people. So all of the settlements in the Jordan Valley are only populated by 6,000 people, that is less than Jericho, but they control less people with more land. About 825 square kilometers of land are under the control of this regional council in the Jordan Valley. These are the settlements. Now, a loan plan was the first experience, or a pilot project, when they spoke of Jordan Valley under Israeli control, and then Jerusalem and Greater Jerusalem under Israeli control, and the rest shall be given to Jordan. When they speak of the Alon plan ended, but it is still used up till now. There is the UC Elfer project. UC Elfer is one of the Mossad agents. We met him, and he was speaking of his project, and his project is control over the Jordan Valley in addition to a number of other elements. He even spoke of Road 505, which crosses the Samira crossing, that is crossing all of the West Bank. And here I go back to the question of the alternative orders, which is Military Order number 50 on roads in 1983, which prescribes for the horizontal and vertical division of the West Bank. But even the Trans Bank or Trans-Samaria Road, Yusuf Spur asked that this road not only be surrounded by a buffer zone, but it will extend from Kufr Qasim in the 1948 occupied areas until Kufr Dania in the Jordan Valley, that it be under full Israeli control. Why? Said because if we think later on that one hit a stone and stopped a tank, or someone put a stone that will stop the tank. So the issue of negotiations with these security people presumes scenarios that have not been prescribed in any book. And here I use in the Quran, in the Surah of Al-Baqarah, when they started to negotiate with Moses and God, how they started with the cow, how does the cow look like, and what is the color of the cow. So they delved into the very, very minimal details so that you go back to the starting point, which is that they will not withdraw and will not give anything, but between the sea, the Mediterranean and the Jordan River is one state. So the Ulfar plan, he speaks of the Latron area, which you know is the Modaim area or Latron, which includes three villages, Gosh Hatzion being part of the Hebrew state, which is located in about 14 settlements, the first of which was established in 1925 and it's called the Kfar Hatzion. And there's Mali Adumim, which is now speaking of Jerusalem in 2050, not 2020, 2050. And we speak of the largest airport that will be established in Al-Bqi'a for the Hebrew state, and speak Bqi'a of Moses the Prophet and not Bqi'a of Tubas or Galilee. We have Al-Bqi'a of Prophet Moses, and the biggest airport for 25 million passengers will be established in this area. So this is the Israeli vision, not for 2020 but for 2050. They include this area under their military strategy. It has nothing to do with the military to the extent that it has to do with investment. 25 minutes to the Dead Sea, that is therapeutic tourism. 25 to Jerusalem for the religious tourism. 10 minutes to Jordan through King Abdullah Bridge, which is now closed, but it will reopen soon. So this is the result. Now we move to the Sharon project. This is the Sharon project, the one on the map here. It's two lines, two parallel lines. Security to the east and west and divide. I have road number 9, which starts from Baqa al-Sharqiyya and Baqa al-Gharbiyya and extends to Al-Shuhada area up to the Jordan Valley and Habret al-Shimron road, and then 35 to the south of Halhul and a road near Qalandia. This is the state. Early warning, as I explained, it's the area of Nablus, Tal al-Asur and Hebron. The security area today, they don't see security as only the Jordan Valley. Security makes them think of Jordan and Iraq in order to reach Iran. So today, the security area, when we speak of the Jordan Valley, even Netanyahu spoke very clearly and he said, I will not revoke the Jordan Valley even if you have multinational forces. I will not revoke this area for security reasons. Although we have a peace process with Jordan and Iraq was Iran, and they're thinking what to do about Iran. So the security of all of this area. Very briefly, now for the Israelis, they use Area C or the Jordan Valley area under security pretenses, but the strategic goal is purely investment. And this is what's happening in all of the Israeli issues. Finally, to conclude, all of what we have said has one outcome. You have the paper at hand. The first outcome, non-existent Palestinian state. Even if we list it and reread it, this is the Israeli vision. The bypass road is to establish two states in one state. That is a state in the first floor and underground Palestinian state. Thus, we come to the end that the Israeli side relating to the Jordan Valley at all levels and among all parties, no matter if they are right or left, agree on one opinion that the Jordan Valley will be under their control and that getting into the valley and exiting the valley will be as per their permission, so that the issue of the Gaza Strip cannot be reenacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to Dr. Mohanad Mustafa. He has a PhD from the Political Science School of Political Science at Haifa University, and he's lecturer and Director General of Madbouh Al-Karmel, the Arab Center for Practical Social Studies. Dr. Mohanad published two books, Palestinians in Israel, The Politics of Faith After Oslo, from Cambridge University Press. The other book, Israel in the Post-Oslo Era. Dr. Mohanad will speak about the annexation projects in the Israeli Good morning, everyone. My intervention will focus on the Israeli in the recent years, the discussion in Israeli in recent years on the annexation attempts, mainly on attempts to annex Area C that turned into almost issue of consensus among the Israeli right wing in recent years. The idea of annexation, and why I am mentioning the Israeli right wing is just because the right wing is controlling the political side of the Israeli discussion, and we expect this control to continue for the years to come. So the proposal of this right wing to annex Area C, which is expected to turn into the political project, this started taking popular support in the Israeli public and enjoys support, sweeping support from the Israeli religious and colonialist right wing. The central allegation or hypothesis, is that the idea of annexation in the Israeli discussion is based on two principles. First, the separation or disengagement, and segregation on the other hand. The more these policies deepen, the more the annexation policies deepen, and the annexation gets more legitimacy among the Israeli public. So the more Israel fragments and isolates the Palestinian territories, the project of annexation takes a new dimension. And the separation in this case is not only geographic, which is the basic one, but also in recent years we have been witnessing legal disengagement or legal separation in the Israeli parliament to legalize that separation, especially in Area C, where the majority of the settlements, and also separation at the level of awareness. This is not done at the level of the Israeli public, but also at the level of Palestinian awareness as well. So the Israeli separation policies are done according to policies carried out in the West Bank. So allow me, after this hypothesis, to read some parts to save time. The idea of annexation is not unified among the Israeli public. There are different approaches in terms of shape, content, and means of implementation. But there are three criteria that we need to understand: the form of annexation, the content and mechanism, and also reasons for that. There are two forms of annexation: the partial one and the total one. The partial one is to annex some parts, such as usually they speak about annexing Area C to the Israeli territories, and this enjoys sweeping support among the Israelis. The total annexation is based on enforcing the Israeli full control of the Palestinian territories, and from its dynamic is a gradual one, which is creeping annexation to be deliberate annexation, total or partial. This is annexing certain areas every time to achieve the proposed annexation, and there is the one-time annexation, be it partial or total. From a content perspective, there is a annexation that gives citizenship rights to the Palestinians in these areas, and there are some who propose giving residential rights for them, and there are others who propose giving them autonomous rule under the Israeli control. We'll try to discuss all these discussions. After the election of Mr. Trump, the Israeli legislators competed to propose drafts, legal drafts to annex this land. After the election of Trump, this turned into like a bazaar, like everyone's trying to provide to submit proposals such as Israeli kilometers, and you have catched, they proposed to annex the Ma'ale Adumim settlement. After them, then Knesset member Miki Zohar from the Likud and Miti Yogev from the Jewish home to annex Gush Etzion, and Ariel Ordon. And the Minister Katz, Israel Katz, proposed to include Biscat Ze'ev. This state of affairs, of bazaar, of an annexation bazaar, even through the MK from Labour Party, her name is Animiat Nahmiya Sberban. She proposed in order, she said she wants to propose the law to embarrass the government. After the government issued the land settlement law that allowed the confiscation of Palestinian private property upon which Israeli settlement outposts were established. So this discussion turned into a bazaar of ideas for annexation, where the Palestinians turned into an object to that. They are not engaged in discussion, and no one takes their point or reaction. And this debate of annexation shows or reflects many ideas in the Israeli arena, away from, aside from the perspective or possibility of implementing them. Here we are not discussing annexation as part of political settlement with the Palestinians, such as the proposal of land swapping and as part of a final settlement solution, but rather discusses the debate to annex away from the settlement with the Palestinians. So here we are dealing with the unilateral annexation debate from the Israeli side. The right wing made the issue of annexation as a strong option for the Israeli alternatives, and I believe this is part of the Oslo Accords, a result of Oslo Accords. The thing that gave this momentum to this idea of annexation is the Oslo reality, or Oslo created reality. On the one hand, this made the other people who have other ideas, even who oppose it, now they are discussing it on with the ideas of annexation with the right wing. That those who hold other ideas, especially those who hold the idea of two-state solution, that they do not oppose annexation if the right wing can do that. So they are challenging the right wing. Okay, you are in power, you do the annexation. And this principle recognition as in the form of challenge. And here I'm quoting, go annex and we will see how you will deal with the situation of Palestinians and with the international position. Or you are in the government for decades, why don't you annex the territories? This is the question that the two-state supporters ask the right-wing people. So these sentences, to embarrass the right wing from their perspective, carry in fact the delegitimization of the two-state solution. And out of awareness or unaware, being unaware, they are giving legitimacy to the annexation, and this is reflected in the increase of public support to annexation ideas. And in a questionnaire 2016, around 40% of the Israelis expressed support to annexing all the West Bank, not only Area C. Whereas the support in 2009 was only 17%. Some of the tools used to gain legitimacy for this by the right wing is to compare that from an economic point of view. Some Israeli researchers propose that 50% of the settlers are turning into religious ones because of the housing crisis. So when you speak about the settlements as just real estate subject to demand, and so then you are speaking about legitimizing the settlement away from the annexation. And so when you ask for annexing the West Bank all or partial, you are proposing it as a natural culmination, starting with the settlement through settlement and ending with the annexation. The philosophy of annexation starts from the principle that you cannot differentiate between areas 1948 and 1967 territories. And here I would like to point out that is important by Clarissa Litzman. She's an Israeli writer who's like Naftali Bennett from the Israeli party, Jewish Home, who knows to be a settler without living beyond the green line, and at the same time to live beyond the green line without being a settler. This is the economic new liberal settlement reading of settlement. In the absence of differentiating between these territories, the Israelis have this logic that there is no difference in terms of legitimacy between the areas, territories occupied during war. Who accepts the Israeli sovereignty in 1948 has to accept the legitimacy of Israeli sovereignty over the 1967 occupied territories. In the Israeli debate of annexation, the separation policies are central to these policies have the following components: to separate between Gaza and West Bank, to separate between the different Palestinians within the West Bank, and between the Palestinians and settlers and between Israel and part of the West Bank, and at the same time Israel connects Israel with parts of the West Bank that were actually annexed, and finally connects between Israel and the settlers. In analyzing the Israeli debate around annexation, this can be divided as follows. The first is annexation without citizenship rights for the Palestinians, and usually here they are speaking about annexing areas inhabited by Palestinians but without giving them civil and political rights. The latest of such suggestions was practically by the Israeli author Aleph Bet Yoshua in his article that he wrote about Area C, saying that in order to alleviate the burden of settlement on Palestinians, he proposed to Israel to annex these areas to give the Palestinians residential rights like in Jerusalem to alleviate the occupation burden. And later on, when settlement solution, then you can return these territories to the Palestinians. It's a farce, and this brings back to the situation of Palestinians, where the situation of Palestinians, residents of Palestinians in Jerusalem led to separating Jerusalem. But also among the Israelis, there are those who propose. Here he says, okay, let's annex them to alleviate the burden of occupation. But in the Israeli settlement right wing or traditional religious right wing, they speak of annexation without settlement rights, which produces an apartheid regime in the West Bank. The other proposal is annexation with citizenship rights. And here, this is the ideology of the traditional right-wing, national right-wing in Israel that believes in annexing all the West Bank, enforcing the Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank territories and residents, and to give them full political citizenship. And here, I would like to point out to one of the most propagandists, which is the Israeli writer Colleen Click. She wrote a book named Annexation Now, trying to give a new momentum to the idea of annexation, along with giving citizenship rights to the Palestinians. The third type is annexation with a Palestinian autonomous rule, which is the most popular one among the right wing. That is to give legitimacy to the de facto situation resulting from Oslo Accord. The Oslo Accords resulted in a situation that is turned into a project for the Israeli right wing, which is the strongest Israeli party calling to maintain the Oslo Accords products. Oslo produced two products, the Palestinian Authority and the division of Palestinian territories into areas A, B, and C. The Israeli mainstream right wing, taking out the religious and liberal right wing, the mainstream right wing in Israel speak of annexation with Palestinian autonomous rule, which is the current situation, but legalizing it as the Israeli situation, annex Area C, and keeping the Palestinian control territories as something that reflects the Palestinian right to self-determination. This includes annexing Area C, Gush Etzion, Pesgat Ze'ev, Ariel, and other settlements. The last form of that debate, which is annexation with amended Jordanian option, which is the option of Ariel Sharon. Ariel Sharon at the end tended, in my view, if he continued in power, he tended to revive the Jordanian alternative with amendment, and this includes annexing parts of the West Bank to Israel and annexing the remaining parts to the Jordanian Authority. And here I conclude that the idea of annexation in Israel is an idea that gains sweeping popularity, especially among the Israeli right wing. And this right wing left its ideological original project towards a project, the central of which, be it for the national or religious right wing, it's their project which is happening on the ground. The project is annexing Area C. This is done through either creeping annexation or legal annexation, repeated legal annexations, and also symbolic annexation by deleting the green line between the 1948 and 1967, such as the Ariel University and Israeli courts, abolishing all the speciality of Israeli settlement organizations and connecting that to Israel, and the learning connections between the settlements and Israel. So in continuation to the previous presentations, and also there is a de facto annexation in preparation for the annexation of Area C. This is a project of the Israeli right wing. Thank you. Thank you, Mohanad. Now we move to Mr. Walid Salem. He is a PhD candidate in international relations from the Near East University in North Cyprus. He issued more than 30 books and a university lecturer in democracy, human rights, and conflict resolution. Mr. Walid will speak about the infrastructure for the Israeli control in Area C.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for the invitation. It is not always bad to be the last speaker, especially that many of the detailed issues were presented. My paper is with you. It was distributed to you, and therefore I will use the time available to me by trying to present a few conclusions that may enlighten our way in the future. The first proposal relating to the future relates to the fact that the conflict is no longer a conflict over borders. We do not have a border conflict that can be solved in a diplomatic track. Considering the conflict as a conflict over border that can be diplomatically settled, it seems that it is too late to do this, because we don't have a formula through which we can reach a diplomatic political solution, considering that the conflict is a conflict over border. But on the other hand, and to counter this concept that it is a conflict over border, we can say something else, that the existing conflict or the existing struggle is a struggle between the Palestinian people, which is working to preserve its existence on its land, in its homeland, to counter a settler colonization project which devours all of Palestine. So if this formula is correct, and that we are speaking of a part of one side of the formula which is based on having a Palestinian people that seeks to preserve its existence, and it is countered by a settler colonization project that aims to usurp all of the land. If this is correct, this makes us able to understand the framework of Oslo. Oslo was based on a political historical trap. This trap had the following essence. You, as Palestinian Authority, on the one hand, control the people. On the other hand, leave the control over the land to the Israeli side. Otherwise, if this formula is not correct, what would it mean then? The continuation of Israeli control over Area C, over East Jerusalem, on the settlement expansion, over 7 times since Oslo's signature to date. So all of what happened was you can control the people, but on the other hand, we will control the land. So control over the land will be in the hands of Israel. And in a certain formula, 25 or 26 years, it appeared that this was a trap, because what was done on the ground is that the Palestinian Authority started to lose land from below its feet, step by step. Meter by meter, we are losing land, meter after meter, as a result of the Israeli controlling policies and measures. So this is what happened. Today, we are facing a reality where the previous formula of dealing with the conflict under the Oslo framework, come and negotiate, and when negotiations stop, let's renegotiate, or let's find a formula to restart the negotiation. And now the proposal of the international conference proposed by the Palestinian National Authority as a formula which I don't know why, because it is not evidence-based, with measures to amend the situation on the ground. You cannot go to negotiations without changing the status quo situation. Presenting all of these issues in this way without amending the situation on the ground will keep us prisoners of the Oslo trap, whose results are already known, and in the future it will only lead to one solution, which is the loss of all of Palestine. We are about to lose our land. In 1948, we lost part of our land, and now we are in a situation where we are very close of losing control over the remaining part of our land if things remain as such. So, looking at the outcome of Oslo as they are translated today on the ground, we find ourselves facing a reality of a tripartite authority. There is a tripartite authority in Palestine now. The first party is the military occupation. So we have military occupation that continues to exist on the ground. The second parameter is the settler colonization, which is continuing. And the third part is the apartheid regime. So the racial discrimination, which Dr. Mohanad said that it is demised on segregation, but it appears through an examination of the Zionist colonial project and its advancement on the ground that segregation is only a temporary form. There is an Israeli researcher called Adi Ophir who proposed that Israel always creates temporary situation, and these temporalities are changeable in the future, and therefore we may have a situation that is based on apartheid, that is segregation, including segregation between Palestinians and Israelis. This is one of the forms of segregation, but this will only lead to another temporality that will be replaced later on by a process of full control through the settler colonization project. In the framework, so it is a triangle, a trio. There is military occupation, settler colonization, and apartheid regime. The third, I reiterate that it is temporal. Although our extensive use of the term apartheid in the Palestinian discourse, we must understand that Israel's use of apartheid is an expression of temporality until better conditions are available in the future to enable it to displace the remaining of the Palestinians, because the Israeli Zionist project, as was expressed by Dr. Mohanad, is on the one hand there is uprooting and replanting on the one hand. So if the future essential dimension is to uproot the Palestinians and have other returnees, so any segregation is only temporal, because the future project is to plant another population. In the framework of this temporality, please let me mention the question of citizenship. Yes, under Oslo, it was the PNA was told to control the people and that Israel would control the land, but control over the people remained control on the civil and religious affairs of the people and not a political form of control. Up till now, in Jerusalem, for example, the Palestinians are dealt with at the Israeli level as Jordanian citizens with permanent residency in Israel. So the land is Israel, and there is permanent residency of other people which may be withdrawn at any moment. In the West Bank, there are similar issues. This issue of temporality exists and modifiable. In Jerusalem, for example, the factor of temporality relating to citizenship started to change. So those who renew their Israeli travel documents in Jerusalem, they write as unclassified or unidentified, that is undefined citizenship. This is the new term used for the by the Israeli authorities to classify the Palestinian citizens of Jerusalem. So they are even no longer Jordanians. They have undefined citizenship. So there is temporality in terms that it is changeable and the existing procedures may change, and there is temporality where your role is on civil and religious affairs of your people and not on political issues. The variable that appeared recently and which expressed the full integration of the USA in the Israeli project is when the USA closed the PLO office in Washington, D.C. and closed the U.S. consulate in East Jerusalem, but it was the consulate that served the Palestinian relations. So closing the PLO representative office and the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem have one meaning only. And we are on the following day of the Balfour Declaration, and the meaning is, on the land of Palestine, there are two peoples, as per the U.S. definition. Even I'm wrong. There is one people according to the Americans, that is the Israeli people. And this people is the people who has rights, political rights, and therefore they're worth of having an embassy in Jerusalem and have an embassy to represent it in Washington. But you, the Palestinians, since you are just a group of people who has civil and religious rights only, so you're not worth of having a representative office in Washington or a consulate in Jerusalem. East Jerusalem or West Jerusalem alike. So this is what the Americans are applying now. And the new thing here expresses the state clearly represented by Professor Ian Lostek. In 1993, he has a famous statement which says that when the mother state or mother nation or the sponsor nation arrives to a situation where it imposes decisions or making decisions toward issues that were a subject of negotiations in the past, when we come to this stage where these issues are no longer an issue of negotiation, this means that negotiations ended and there are only decisions that will be taken to serve the more powerful party. And this is what was said by Professor Lostek in 1993, and this is what is taking place in Palestine now. So Lostek says, and behind him the U.S. administration, it says it's crystal clear that the land which the Palestinians used to call the land of Palestine is no longer as such. This is the land of Israel. And as land, when we speak of the land of Israel, we speak of the land of Israel on the 1948 border, including the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. So this is now an integral part of the land of Israel according to this definition. And therefore, the sayings of David Friedman in supporting the settlement expansion is not something to be surprised with. This is their position. This is the land of Israel, and it extends from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. Based on this, if this was clear to us all, according to this, we can understand better than the segregation. We can understand the strategies of displacement and replacement. The strategies of segregation is what was presented by Nib Gordon from Beersheba University and other people, which says as if we have a situation of segregation which includes a problem of understanding of what will happen in 5 years from now. But now I'm trying to see what will happen after that. It's not enough to see what will happen in 5 years from now, but what next? What next is the same. It has not changed. It is the displacement and replacement. On the one hand, there is a displacement of the Palestinians, and on the other hand, replacing them by another population, that is the settlers. Before 1948, the question of displacement and replacement was done in applying three key features of the Zionist colonial projects. The first feature, which differentiated it, was the demographic uprooting, and which was mainly addressed by Dr. Nadim Rouhana in several essays about the demographic uprooting, that it was clear that there was demographic uprooting. On the other point, the long-term massacres and genocide, unlike the settler colonization in the United States, which was done in immediate genocide, the Zionist settler colonization kills you while you are alive. So what does it mean to be a Jerusalemite? Living a state of temporality. You have a temporary ID and you are considered a Jordanian citizen, but on the other hand, it's as if you are alive, but you're not. So this is called the long-term massacres or genocide, that while you are living and breathing as if you are dead, you are treated as dead. The third issue is that this state, which was built before 1948, was built by a UN decision, a UN resolution. And this is probably our key problem as Palestinians, is that this state, the settler colonization in the United States, was established without any permission of the UN or without any resolutions of the UN. But this state in Israel was created by a UN resolution. Yes, there were decisions like you must apply the partition plan 181 and 19194, but it seems that in the ability of the UN to enforce its own resolutions, this question became irrelevant. Today, what's taking place on the ground is that we have, on the one hand, UN resolutions that say that Israel is limited to the 1948 border, but on the other hand, we have another de facto situation where we have 600,000 settlers, the least statistical figures, so that we won't be accused of exaggeration. So if we have 614,000 colonizers on the ground by the end of 2017, and that this figure is increasable in the next years to 1 million settlers, taking into account that the natural demographic growth of settlers without planting any other new settlers from abroad is 3.9 per year, according to Israeli studies. So in 20 years from now, they will be 1 million without importing any other settlers. So this is the situation that we're facing today. In other terms, if you have a settler colonization project expressed this way, and you have position vis-a-vis the settlers in the way it was described, so we are facing a very serious situation. My last remark, the Palestinian strategies to confront this dangerous situation are problematic, and they make things more complicated. Those who review the strategies of Salam Fayyad's government and Rami Alhamdullah's government, they will find the last strategy says the following: we will face the strategies of imposing facts on the ground by internationalization. In other terms, this means first we will work politically and legally at the international level only, without working on the ground, that we will not be recruiting our people on the ground to be effective in confronting the situation. So this is problematic, because your main bet must be your people, and mobilizing your people to put an end to this Zionist project. So the main recommendation of my paper, and I will conclude with this, my main recommendation is to move from meta-internationalization, that is working legally and relatively, to the inferior bottom-up internationalization, that is we need to unite our people and put an end to the internal split, and then bring in the international community to work with us in Area C outside the framework of the Israeli complications. So there are Israeli impediments in Area C, and we will work in isolation of these impediments in collaboration with the international community, rather than making the international community decide for us how we will manage Area C. We must decide by our own initiative how to do this, and to recruit the international community to support our cause in this regard. This is the alternative formula that I see possible, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Walid. Now we'll open the floor for discussions, questions, but I would like to thank the Institute of Palestine Studies. These papers were very fruitful and sequential. Yes, go ahead, sir. I have a question to Mr. Mohanad. You always speak about the security stability and how it affects settlement, but how does this affect the annexation debate? And my question to Mr. Khalil, unfortunately the issue of borders and everything, not only researchers depend on OCHA and international organizations, even the government itself. The government is not decided where are the borders, and even yesterday's statistics, they ignore them. They look only at the strategic plans and international organizations, but they don't look or consider what the Central Bureau of Statistics, what statistics they have. So it's an issue of the government, not only that of the researchers. Thank you. My question to Dr. Mohanad. How much can you say that if we accepted the natural development of issues for the Israeli right wing as concerning the issue of Palestinian presence in what remains of Palestine, how can you connect this to the seeds that the Israeli right wing has planted regarding its relation with the Palestinians? And also the principles of Oslo that is based on limited autonomous rule and dividing the territories without an end game, even as related to Jerusalem. We know that in Oslo it has never been mentioned the issue of Palestinian sovereignty or the state, except the roadmap that was rejected in Bush letter to Sharon at that time, that they want to maintain the de facto or the facts on the ground. Thank you. Thank you. My question is to Dr. Walid. Maybe he can explain to us what is the mechanism to work in Area C away from the Israeli control, because even in Area A we are unable to do anything without Israeli consent. There is a project for a bridge in Nablus, and Israel is objecting to that. So it took 10 years before the Israelis approved that. So how can we work in Area C while the Israelis are controlling even the air that we breathe? I have a question. Then we'll take answers, then we can take another round. My question to Dr. Mohanad as to issue of annexation. You said that in all of this there is no mention of the Palestinians or what. I was wondering how much this is true, that even your discussion today of the annexation is a contribution to the discussion, to that discussion. So the discussion is there, and people either against or with, they are further consolidating this discussion. So how far the Palestinians are absented, that the Palestinians themselves, they don't differentiate. Look at also the Palestinian, some they say, okay, Palestinians are not believing even Oslo or 1967 and 1948. So in a way or the other, as if it is contradictory, but it's in the same direction, isn't it? And I don't know how much the other factions understand this. Although they are not giving importance to the Palestinians, but maybe there is some understanding that the Palestinians are calling for everything. This narrative has been around even before Oslo. Let's open the floor for answers now. Before some time there was a statement by a mayor of valley settlements. He says that we need to repeat what we did in the Golan Heights, to do that in the valleys. He was speaking of the issue that these areas that were not discussed, that these valleys are not important to them. As residents, they are turning into more as the civil status. They are building stone houses, I'm quoting, and they own cars. They try to connect to the civil life and the new civilization. And so there is a great percentage of them that are seeking to get blue identity card. I believe he's referring to the Israeli identity card. Yeah, he is referring to the Palestinians in the valley area. So, as if they are seeking the Israeli identity, and as someone from C area, from the area C, and my mother is from Jerusalem. Whenever I go to my village, they ask me, did you get the blue identity card or not? In my view, we need to look at this and take it into consideration. You have the demography there. Are they accepting or rejecting that annexation? How to face that? So you need to engage them. Thank you. No question directed at me, but I would like to speak about the issue that some citizens in Area C, in Bethlehem, Al-Walaja, many residents there, they accepted the Area C. And they started, instead of having to apply for a permit to work in Jerusalem, now they use that Israeli blue identity card. As to the valleys issue. As geographers, because our issue with the Palestinian Authority is the head is a politician, he's not academic. We do not lack politicians, but the academics. When they propose, what do you mean? And by the region. And sometimes I was asked to divide Jerusalem into three areas, and they wanted to divide that politically instead of geographically, so I closed my file. In defining the valleys as a Palestinian, we need a full study. We do not lack also academic studies. In the issue of figures, sir, and this is a personal experience. If I want to publish something, I will send it to the Hebrew press to publish it so that they can trust what I'm saying. In 1995, there was an operation. We published that in the newspapers in the first page and second time. No one responded to us, so we sent it to the Jerusalem Post. Then we got noticed, and this moved to the United Nations. Today, we have a colleague who is highly qualified, but Rasim Khamaisi, if he speaks today until end of the day, no one will listen to him. But if Arnan Sufer, a professor from Haifa, then they will say, okay, the Israelis said this and that. This is the issue within us. It's not on the other side. The Israeli side, even if you give them wrong, they will say the state said so. But we have an issue on this. At the same time, the organizations that were issued after 1994, they were established based on the Israeli civil administration. And so they started trusting that, and all our issues are part of this. That was later on politicized and had nothing to do with the academics. Now we are speaking of Jerusalem, and so they brought all the experts and gave me them as experts. They are not politicians. The politician implements, but the academic provides the solution. Dr. Walid gave you, this is the solution, and you need to use this. He gave you a solution. The politician uses these circumstances. But if the politician is short-sighted, then catastrophes will happen. And when I showed you from Al-Baqarah verse in Quran, then they will make you lost in the details and the negotiations that will so much you will have to negotiate with them if you want to stand on the right or left. So the issue of valleys. I'm speaking as a geographer, not as a politician. It's limited, known. The Israelis look at it starting from the hills overlooking Jordan, the Alon line, even Mali Avraham on top of the mountain, and Fush Bet Dajan, and all this area as part of the valleys area, even Nabi Musa. That is far away from Jordan. They added that to the valleys area, and this is the Israeli division, so that at the end of the day to see how to say that Jordan cannot and can in no way, they cannot sit fearing that Tehran or Hamas can be the next day there. Thank you for the questions. I would like to connect between the first question and the question that asked by Dr. Ghada. I believe there is a connection between the two questions. The issue of absenting the Palestinians from the Israeli debate on the future West Bank or the future solution with the Palestinians. This absentation, in my view, is a result of that everyone makes a proposal, not only the politicians. Sometimes you find academics who provide such a fast solution. Everyone is making proposals as if there are no Palestinians existing to make proposals. So this shows that as if Israel is not paying the price for its occupation. There is no other reason. Israel does not see the Palestinians because the Palestinian or Israel is not paying a price for its occupation. Occupation is an easy cake since Oslo Accords. So Israel is not noticing the Palestinians in any debate. The debate around the Palestinians is an inter-Israeli debate. It's not with the Palestinians. So the Palestinian is absented. And how is that connected as related to the Palestinian awareness? This is in connection, as if there is one Palestinian people. In my view, Israel is aware of this issue. That's why Israel is pushing for separation policies, not only to separate the Palestinian geography, but also to amputate or to separate the Palestinian awareness. That is, to build Palestinian projects that have different projects, not political projects. I believe this is realistic for the Palestinians to have their own different projects, such as those living in 1948 and 1967 and those in diaspora. They have their own different political projects, but these separation projects are Israel trying to separate them into different national projects, such as the national project that speaks about the unity of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian national unity is one of the most important projects to face the Israeli separation policies. It is not the state project, it is the unity of the Palestinian people. That is, within the national project there are different political interests for the Palestinians. But the issue is that the separation, if committed or done within the Palestinian awareness, then I believe this annexation, even geographically and from sovereignty point of view, will be possible. As to your question about the roots of Israeli political projects for the Israeli right wing, I had a presentation at Madbouh Center on Oslo Accords. I said the Israeli right wing, in dealing with Oslo, they have an interesting paradox. They continued with their narrative on Oslo. The narrative Israeli right wing has not changed, but the political project changed. Although it changed based on the product of the Oslo project, the narrative around Oslo remained the same, but the political project of the Israeli right wing changed. I'm speaking about the mainstream. I'm not speaking about the religious or liberal right wing. I'm speaking about the Israeli mainstream right wing. Their political project is built around the Oslo Accord. Although their narrative around Oslo Accord is the same as being catastrophe against Israel and rejected, blah, blah. But their political project is that of Oslo. And it's built on the last speech by Rabin before he was assassinated. If you listen to the Bar Ilan speech by Netanyahu and the Rabin speech, you'll find it's the same. When he said, I have red lines for dealing with the Palestinians, no return to 1967 areas, no to dismantling settlement blocks, no return for the refugees, no for dividing Jerusalem, and the Jordan Valley is an area under Israeli sovereignty. These are the 4 red lines. These are the Bar Ilan speech. So the project of the Israeli right wing is the Oslo one. From ideological point of view, the Israeli right wing adopted that. The issue of separation is that of the Israeli Zionist left. When Sharon proved that or embraced that, and now it is adopted by the right wing. But if you see all these changed in the project of the Israeli political right wing, they maintain their narrative. Why? In order to consolidate and give support for their political project. By maintaining their narrative, they have a win-win situation. They have a win situation in the absence of political stability, of security stability attributed to Oslo, and when you maintain that, they have same thing, equally win-win situation. So it's an attempt to implement the new project. I had two questions. The first one from a colleague there. What's your name, please? Mu'tasim Samara. Mr. Mu'tasim asked a question on changing direction in Area C. Now we have two directions, and both of them are not useful. The first one is a consortium by the NRC, the Norwegian Refugee Council, in cooperation with around 7 European countries. They are working on human rights issues in Area C, and when they work on these rights, they are working in an area that is less than 1%. Israel allows the Palestinians only to invest in 1%. That is the first direction. The second one, which I call as the direction of two groups depending on each other. The first one is the Palestinian Authority and the second one is the European Union. The Palestinian National Authority expects the EU to initiate major projects in Area C, such as road construction and others, and the EU awaits the Palestinian Authority to take the initiative. So each of them is waiting for the other. And they had the agreement that let's give Israel an opportunity to approve the projects, and then we start implementing without awaiting the Israeli approval. Here I recommend to hold a scientific study in Area C to see what it has been implemented and what has not been implemented. Like the authority used to submit, Palestinian Authority used to submit hundreds of projects, draft projects, but Israel would approve 1.5%, and so the number of projects approved by Israel or implemented by the Palestinian Authority is not known, and even we don't know how many projects implemented and how many were destroyed, and so a study is needed. These are the two things. Now, the other alternative is as follows, and this is not an easy alternative. I cannot describe it. But you need to start. Someone needs to start and to say, okay, it's not enough not to accept the Israeli restrictions. Israeli restrictions are taking you into a totally opposite direction. So the only way is to create your own direction as a Palestinian, to start implementing projects in Area C and to try to mobilize the international community to provide support. In my view, one of the models, and it is there and it's being discussed, is Al-Aqabi village near Tubas. This model of a Palestinian village called Al-Aqabi village. The Israeli occupation destroyed their road. They built the road. They built a clinic, a school, and other projects. Every time the Israelis destroy, the mayor, Sami As-Sadiq, who was sitting on a wheelchair because he was made disabled with Israeli bullet, and he kept the bullet in his body. So there is an experience to build on. We need to study that experience and to see what we can do based on that. I have 3 proposals. The first one, to create facts on the ground, such as Al-Aqabi village. Number 2, to start taking our workers in the Israeli settlements. This is shame. Yes, we need to provide alternatives for them. When we have around between 30 to 50,000 workers in the, and according to an academic study from Al-Quds University about Palestinian investments and the Israeli settlements, joint Israeli-Palestinian investments in the settlements. So we need to divest from Israeli settlements and to take away our workers and then start boycotting these, taking our workers. This is not an Israeli product. and start investing in our products. And then why Al-Araqib in Al-Naqab has been demolished 138 times. But we started with Bab al-Shams and Al-Karami villages. We built with tent village and we got recognition from Palestinian Authority and we didn't continue. We need to continue and to ensure sustainability. Then at the end of the day we can succeed. What's your good name, sir? Riyadh. Diya. Your question was about the issue of identity cards. When you don't have alternative national project, which I say that I described some of its components. When you don't have alternative national project, or you have one that is not attractive and does not provide alternative to people, then whatever you are saying, it was said by Alter Tmimi, Baro Fremi, and Emile Césaire, and Franz Benon, on how the occupied accept what's being done to them by the occupier, it will be facts on the ground. And so you'll be dealing with the strongest. So what you are saying, Sadia, is an opportunity for us to start changing the direction. We cannot stay this way. If we continue this way, we will be losing the Unity Palestine project and we'll be losing the possibility of establishing the Palestinian state. Thank you. We have room for more questions if you wish.
I have a question to each one of the panelists regarding Mr. Ahmed. He spoke in general about a description of the alternative or bypass roads and their effects or features and how they reflect upon the annexation process and usurpation of land and so on. But in my opinion, every bypass road constructed has its distinguished status and effect on the community and the area in which they are constructed, and therefore it would be useful, for example, the bypass roads that lead to Nablus, for instance, when there is any accident in Za'atara or in Hawara or wherever, how are they used? How each one of these roads is used? Each one has its own specificity in impeding the daily routine of the local community. Therefore, it would be useful to specify. It is very good that you gave the general presentation, but it would be also useful to examine the specificity of each bypass road and its particular repercussions. To our friend Mr. Khalil Toufakji, he spoke of the security perspective in general. However, he did not address the processes of implementation of this perspective, and what Israel established a number of rules in the Jordan Valley, and these rules, what is the role of their security dimension and their effect and so on. This was not addressed, or if it was addressed, it was only in general terms. Please clarify this point further. Regarding Dr. Mohanad, you spoke of annexation or the different theories of annexation in general, but you did not speak more specifically of Area C. How do these theories apply to Area C? Furthermore, these theories, how do they relate, or if the pronouns, that is the Israeli right, if the pronouns of these theories, do they exclude the political solution entirely with the Palestinians, or how do these theories correlate to the solution, the final status solution for every one of these groups? And also the question of the one-state solution. The question of annexation, that is annexing all of the areas, the people, land, and so on. Will this lead us to a one-state solution, and how will these people do they not fear that this one-state solution be the only feasible solution? Second point, the nation-state law, which was necessarily enacted by Israel, it was not addressed as one of the practical steps that support the annexation. The final point to Mr. Walid, the Israeli infrastructure in Area C to control Area C. You have addressed the issues of politics, but you did not speak of the physical aspects that were established by the Israeli side to control what is the physical infrastructure created in Area C. Thank you. A last question. Please allow me to answer in English to this question. سوف أتحدث عن هذا الموضوع في ورقتي بعد الظهر، ولكنني سوف أتطرق إليه الآن. لدينا قضية الضم الذي يتحدث عنه الناس الآن، ولدينا أيضا قضية الفلسطينيين الذين يعملون داخل المستوطنات، وقد تطرقنا لهذا الموضوع وأنه يجب علينا أن نقوم بكل جهد ممكن لوقف هذا العمل. إنهم يعملون في هذه المستوطنات منذ 40 سنة، والسلطة الفلسطينية كان بإمكانها أن تجمع، كان لديها مليارات الدولارات التي كان بإمكانها أن تستثمر من خلالها لوقف عمالة الفلسطينيين في المستوطنات، ولكن السلطة الفلسطينية لم تهتم بهذا النوع من الاستثمار. وعندما نقول هذا فإن الضم يعني أن الضم سوف يتواصل وسوف يظل الفلسطينيون يعملون في المستوطنات. وما رأيكم بالعمال الفلسطينيين الذين يحاولون أن، خاصة في غور الأردن، أنهم يعملون في السلطة الفلسطينية؟ وماذا لو تجمعوا معا وطالبوا بحقوقهم كعمال حسب القوانين الإسرائيلية؟ إن هذه خطوة نحو الضم، ولكنني أتساءل ما رأيكم بهذه الفكرة أن يتكون اتحاد للعمال المطالبة بحقوقهم بناء على القوانين الإسرائيلية؟ Let's take answers. 2 minutes per speaker. Thank you for this comment. It's very important. But if we want to interview the people around this street, they say that the land was expropriated and that we organize meetings with the people whose land was expropriated. I believe that there are some detailed functions of every street that may differ, but the general framework and the framework, all of the bypass roads serve a main function and common goals, which I presented in my intervention, which is to achieve the cleansing of the Palestinian population and to start the displacement process. So this is the very settler colonization process. There is army, civil administration, police forces, planning, master plans, municipalities. All of these components of the so-called State of Israel are working to achieve the colonization project. The other remark, which was not mentioned yesterday or today, there are some names that are given by the Palestinians to Area C. They say that this is safe area C, that is, you're allowed to stay in. So even the Palestinians started to use the discourse of the colonizer and apply that these are safe areas, these are not safe zones, here you are allowed to build, or you can put a caravan on wheels because this is not a license permit, but you cannot build on the ground, so it will be confiscated, and so on. Regarding the fact that I didn't speak of the Jordan Valley, between 1967 up to 97, all of the Jordanian army, because all of the West Bank was a disarmed area, so there were some camps of the Jordanian army which were then transformed into military bases up to 1970. When the Palestinian resistance in Jordan left, gradually this Nahal started to turn into kibbutzim or capitals like Mali Afraim. In this area and under this period, that is in the 70s, there wasn't any Israeli vision. Yes, there were some attempts, but there was a peace process. Shall we redeem the West Bank to Jordan or not? The PLO was outside this framework. So the borders between 1967 were open, not in the very concept of opening, but the people used to move between the two areas. Smuggling, that is, it was illegal, quote unquote, and then they were fully closed, the borders were fully closed between 1967 1998. In the 70s they were ended, so the camps, these military camps, were transformed into kibbutzim, and then they became of the so-called national preferred area, and they were supported investment-wise, but security was used for these reasons. And here I'm speaking of 1970, and we started in 1977. In 1970 it was the Alon Plan, and in 1977 when the Likud came to power, in 87 the national leadership, and then the issue where the Jordan Valley will be the cemetery of the tanks from the eastern side, because the eastern side comprised Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. And they always relied on the feet of the mountain, that is, any person coming from the east to the west will be destroyed in the Jordan Valley before they can even reach the valleys of the mountain. So the borders of the Jerusalem municipality to the east was the mountains, the Olive Mountain and the other mountains overlooking the Jordan Valley. These Nahala or Jordanian army camps, which later on were transformed into Israeli army camps and then into settlements like Mitzpeh, Yericho, Ofar, which was also Ofra, was also a Jordanian army camp that was transformed for Israeli use. This graduality from 1967 up to 97, the Israeli side wanted to preserve authority over the Jordan Valley and Gush Etzion and Jerusalem. So in the Israeli security theory, Jordan Valley, and up till now, because Netanyahu on the 50th anniversary of Israel, he said, I will not revoke any part to the right or to the left of the Jordan Valley. Thank you for the question. That question is a heavy one. It requires a lot of things to answer. In my intervention, I addressed the issue of how the Oslo Accord transformed a temporary situation into a fixed and permanent one. Through this permanent situation, Area C were transformed into the new Israeli Right project, that is annexation of Area C to the Israeli Right project. So the Israeli Right today says whether this annexation will be according to an agreement or without an agreement with the Palestinians, it really doesn't matter to the Israeli Right, because this is their right. Whether if the Palestinians approve it, it will be great. If the Palestinians do not agree, they will unilaterally annex this area. The question is what is the political or historical juncture when this annexation will be legally announced. Now there is a legal annexation, including the nation-state law, which I consider as a first legal step for the annexation. There is also annexation at the level of awareness and all of the administrative decrees made today to normalize all of the orders relating to Jordan Valley or to legalize them under the Israeli law. When the right will choose the moment to announce that it is time to declare annexation of Area C, I believe that they still haven't decided when. I don't think that it is their choice now to announce it this way, but this is the Israeli right project. Why aren't they afraid of a one state? I speak of the right, speaking of the Area C, there is the Messianic right and the liberal right, which still believe of the annexation of all of the Israeli West Bank under Israeli control with citizenship rights to the Palestinians. Why don't they fear the one-state solution? Because it will be a Jewish state. This state will be a Jewish state. When you tell them that there is a demographic threat, the opponents say there is a demographic threat, they exclude it. They undermine it. Because to them this is a non-existent threat, or it is an illusionary threat. Or in the end, this part of the imposition of control, you are also Israelizing the conscience of the Palestinians. So from this perspective, it will be a Jewish state. Even those who propose annexation without citizenship rights, they create an apartheid situation. There is a man called Neki Zohar, and the last suggestion he made is that we annex all of the West Bank. We give equal rights to the Palestinians at social and equal right, except for the right to vote. So they will not be able to vote to the parliament. So this national state law needs a lot of things, but I believe that this is part of the process of expansion of the Israeli state on the area occupied in 1967. Thank you, Dr. Mohanad. If we can, in 1 minute. I mentioned the Israeli measures in Area C in my paper, therefore I said I will not be presenting them. There is internal and external displacement. The questions of the Bedouins is very clear. Licensing, only 1.5% of the projects submitted in application receive permits. There's Judaization of the land, usurpation of private land, the national state law, which imposes Israeli control in the West Bank area and Gaza as well. There are names like Shiloh Valley instead of the area in which it exists, or also in Israeli courts to use the term local people. So you and the settlers will bear the same legal denomination. You both are local communities or local residents. So it is a problem between two local residents or local neighbors. So this is one of the problems as well. So there are many issues that can be mentioned here. I see that the Israeli steps since 1967 to date, from the solutions at the regional level to annex what we want and re-give what we want and segregation, all of these projects come under the same context, is to impose gradual control. And sometimes Israel uses the application of the Israeli law, which starts with the application of the Israeli law on the area, and then I say that what is taking place now is settler colonization and not colonizing settlement. Why do I emphasize on colonization? I answered relating the labor. And they can say, why is it as such? Why do the labor force in the settlements do not unionize? There is Makatla over there who works on this issue, and this will fix the labor, Palestinian labor or workers in the settlements, but we want to withdraw this labor. We don't want to have them in fixed positions there. We will proceed the discussion we have 15 minutes coffee break from 11:30 to 11:45. In the fourth session at 11:45 we have a presentation in English if you need interpretation headsets. And I want to announce for registration of the Jordan Valley trip tomorrow, Sunday, at 1 you may register if you wish to join us.